This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream. The stream I do on Sundays because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Sunday morning. It's actually kind of nice out. Actually kind of temperate. Not overwhelmingly hot as it has been the last several weeks, but we'll see where the day takes us. Otherwise, I guess my mouth is still waking up. I haven't really been talking or anything today so far. It's just been very silent work around the house. Did some laundry, made some breakfast, just kind of inside my own thoughts. So let's exercise those speaking muscles, shall we, everyone? Anyway, how's everybody doing this morning? And who's joining me on this beautiful Sunday evening? Sunday evening? What? Okay, Brain is still waking up too. Noah Asensio, good morning. John Trioxin, good morning. Josh Hammond, good morning to you. Old Guy Gamer, good morning to you. And thank you, Old Guy, for sharing out the stream on the Twitters. Mike Savage, blarg. Keeverdam, good morning to you, and thank you, Keeverdam, as always, for providing the links to the GoFundMes and fundraisers otherwise for our friends AJ, Roan Harushan, Natalie, and Angela Ariaga. If you guys can take a look at those when you have the opportunity. If you are able to donate, please do so. If not, but otherwise, please share those out on social media, as every little bit helps. Thank you, Keeverdam, and thank you guys ahead of time for that. Mike R., good morning to you. Derek LaRue, thank you, Derek, as always, for your continued ridiculous generosity and support. Really very much appreciated. Hope you're having a good Sunday morning. And I hope you enjoy the show. Tire Alexander, king of all tires. The Tire King. No, Tyr Alexander, the Scourge. Good morning. I swear my brain and my mouth will wake up sometime this morning. I promise. Michael Sander, good morning to you. Shadowclaw, good morning. Funtime Bats, good morning. Robert Pincus, good morning to you. Kiro Soldier, good morning. JMK, good morning. The Best Remy, good morning. Captain Frost, good morning to you. Let's see, who else is here? Ryan R., good morning. Shiro Amada, good morning to you. Renovatio, good morning to you. Anybody else I see? Okay, Shoal, good morning. Roasted Opinions, good morning. Sabian 187, good morning to you. And I think that's everyone. I hope I didn't miss anybody, but if I happen to, I apologize. But for those of you lurking or otherwise in the future, good morning. Yes, so I am toying with the idea, since this is the second week in a row, of turning the Sunday stream into kind of a news digest. Might not always be the case. Maybe occasionally I'll do videos as well or something, or some kind of review or critique. But I was playing around with the idea after last week of just trying out a news digest, stories that came to my attention over the course of the week or within recent memory, just for education and enlightenment or internal disgust. We'll have at least one of those in this set today. Urcale De Stefano, good morning to you. And Spider-Man, good morning to you. Full Metal Joker, good morning to you. But let's start off with our favorite friend in politics, not at CNN, mind you. That's still Chris Cillizza. Kamala Harris. I am curious to find out, at least from CNN's perspective, what is going on the inside, the fast-moving launch of Kamala Harris for president. Yes, take us inside to how Joe Biden was just diehard, focused as a laser on running again for president, and out of the blue, out of the sun, he's just like, okay, I give up. And this individual who had been up until about a month ago, a relatively forgotten element of the ticket, an individual who had, just as of February of this year, behind the scenes was trying to claw for any relevancy in a campaign that shared her name, a person who insider Democrats prior to all of this had been begging Joe Biden to drop from the ticket because she was effectively an albatross around his political neck. How has Kamala Harris suddenly become so popular? You might almost think it's something very, very artificial, very, very blown up out of proportion. One might think. But let's see what CNN has to say about the inside scoop on her fast-moving launch for president for the second time. 3 weeks into her presidential run was the first time the Biden campaign's pollsters, now hers, held a deep dive call with Kamala Harris's inner circle to discuss what she's been saying on the stump. It took 3 weeks to do this into the campaign. Okay, I just want to bring up another little piece of historical trivia for the sake of things. You may recall, or you may not recall, that early into the Biden presidency, Joe Biden assigned Kamala Harris the job of investigating the origins of the migrant crisis. This is what came to be known as turning Kamala into the migration czar or the border czar. Can you say how long it took her to go from being given that assignment to actually just showing up at the border for as little as a photo op to show that she was actually, following along with her assignment from the president? It was months, plural. It wasn't like the office of the vice president said, oh, we're going to be given this assignment. Maybe we should start coordinating a full media political blitz to show that she's on top of the issue of the border and migration, and we should visit this place, we should talk to these people, start a meeting with this. No. And that's what led to the absolutely disastrous interview with Lester Holt, where he queries her on this. Very simply, it's like, well, you're given this assignment and you haven't been to the border yet. And she's like, we have been to the border. And he's like, you haven't been to the border. And she's like, well, I haven't been to Europe either. I really should find that clip and just have that as a stinger at some point. I haven't been to Europe either, as we go on, because this campaign, even though there's only less than 100 days until the, is it 100 days or something? It's very short amount of time until the election now. It's gonna heat up pretty quick, especially once we start getting into if Kamala ever gives an interview or if the first time we ever hear from her is the debate on the 10th of September. Anyway, that's only the first paragraph. Let me just move on. Over the line came a lot of praise, but also some suggested tweaks. First, said veteran Democratic numbers man Jeff Guerin, summarizing their analysis, stop saying, quote, we're not going back, unquote. It wasn't focused enough on the future, he argued. Second, lay off all the weird talk, too negative. Harris's advisors listened. They considered the arguments. They decided to stick with what the crowds were chanting in the arenas, because ultimately, I guess Kamala's led by the mob. When advisors who had been on the call briefed the vice president on the suggestions, according to CNN's conversations with close to a dozen people involved with internal campaign decisions, she told them she wasn't going to listen to the pollsters herself and would instead trust the instincts she had buried under self-doubt for so long. Okay, just as a note, I have not read this previously. I don't know what's going to happen in this article. I am still bewildered by the previous article I've been pushing for a couple of weeks now, which is the one from 2021 or so, which talked about the inside scoop of Kamala's office in the vice presidency, which was amazing in its tell-all, absolutely chaotic nature. I'm seeing hints of that same situation here, and she's had 3.5, almost 4 years to learn something from her mistakes. I'm going to read that part one more time. She told them she wasn't going to listen to the pollsters herself and would instead trust the instincts she had buried under self-doubt for so long. Okay, Harris has shocked even people close to her with how she's been coming across in the just 4 weeks since she became a presidential candidate. Yeah, by royal fiat, effectively, without actually being voted in. Many political obsessives who had largely written off the vice president can't understand how a woman whose early struggles they still keenly remember is now projecting as succinct and punchy, comfortable on stage and in her own skin. Well, except it's not her own skin. It's the teleprompter's skin. We haven't seen Kamala unfiltered yet, have we? We haven't. Everything has been staged. Everything's been scripted. The one moment so far where she was completely on her own was in communicating with, I think it was either the reporters or the family members of the hostages freed from, was it Russia? Yeah, the reporter and everything. And she's standing there next to Biden and she just starts saying words there on the tarmac. And it's all nonsense. It's just babble. So she's not yet in her own, we have not yet observed her in her own skin that has not been written for her. CNN, I would hope you would at least acknowledge that. Part of this is a strategic decision to limit her appearances and hold off from sitting for an interview so that her only major moment without a teleprompter or aides first editing video was on the tarmac at Andrews Air Force Base as she greeted the Americans returning home in President Joe Biden's multilateral prisoner swap. Again, I haven't read this ahead of time. I didn't know that was coming in the paragraph. I was just thinking to myself, when have we actually heard from her unbound by a teleprompter? And even okay, thank you, CNN. I'm glad CNN has acknowledged that. I just dug at CNN a second ago for not mentioning that, but now they did, so I take it back. I walk back that criticism. A snippet of her jumbled syntax was quickly pumped out by Republican National Committee operatives and others. Would any of those others be anyone who wasn't on the right side of the aisle? Okay. Quote, "This is just an extraordinary testament to a president who understands the power of diplomacy and understands the strength that rests in understanding the significance of diplomacy and strengthening alliances," unquote. And while several Democratic officials told CNN privately that the turnaround for a politician whose weaknesses haven't magically disappeared may be setting the party up for devastation if she stumbles, and she will, Harris isn't just feeding off the burst of Democratic good feelings that followed Biden's exit. Are you sure about that? Suddenly John Cena appears. She's feeling a sense of liberation campaigning for herself rather than calibrating around Biden. That might not be to her benefit. It might have been to her long-term benefit that she be kept in the background. But now Biden is like, hey, everybody, you want it? I honestly feel like Biden, for everything else that Biden is, he's nothing more than sour grapes at this point, and maybe justifiably so, the way that they sort of effectively blackmailed him into dropping out of the race. Either you do this our way, or we'll start moving with the 25th Amendment stuff and make it really ugly, and your legacy will be this, 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 and this. So him fully endorsing Kamala without leaving any room to maneuver for any other candidate or the rest of the party, knowing Kamala has some inherent flaws, might be the biggest middle finger that Biden could have given to the party in revenge for what they've done to him. And of course, what he's done to himself, but his ego won't allow him to admit that. C. Thomas, pardon me. C.T. Thomas. You're not having like a CAT scan or something, right? Scribbles, sir, why and how did we get collectively held hostage some of the most grossly incompetent? Oh, by some of the most grossly incompetent? It was a lack of vision, imagination, and enthusiasm by the Democratic Party to put somebody up to challenge Trump, and everybody and their brother just caring about someone who's not Trump. Put up someone who's not Trump. Also, this consistent sense that someone is owed something, right? We saw this during the both Hillary campaigns. It's her turn. I'm with her, as though somehow she is just owed the presidency because she's been around a while. That Joe Biden didn't really oppose Hillary too strongly in trying to run for president back in 2016. So now he's owed something. He's the elder statesman in literal terms, if not functional terms. This sense of manifest destiny for some of these politicians, that they're owed something or whatever, and then everybody gloms on to go, oh look, this is somebody who's outwardly respectable or something, and they're certainly better than Trump. Not being Trump is the wind at the back of Kamala right now, and it is a wind that may be strong enough to put her into the White House. I'm not one of the people that thinks Kamala has no chance of getting into the White House or winning this. I think she has a fair chance at this point. short of an absolute PR disaster, which will be Kamala Harris speaking unrestrained for the first time in a decidedly, unavoidably public sphere. I honestly think, I've said this previously, I honestly think that the debate between Trump and Harris, upcoming on September 10th, may be more destructive for the Democratic Party than the debate between Trump and Biden. Because here's the things you have to remember. In the debate between Trump and Biden, Trump didn't do anything extraordinary. He wasn't that impressive, in my opinion, at least. He was all over the place. He would start a sentence and not finish it. He would make a point, but then not really make a point. He was here, there, and otherwise. The benefit for Trump is that he is a known quantity. There's no mystery there anymore for Trump. You listen to his speeches, you listen to his debates. There's nothing left to discover about how Trump operates. The big question mark that everybody had in their mind when that debate began was, how is Biden going to do? Because is he going to be better than Trump on the stage? And he decidedly was not. And even worse so, Trump was more coherent, Trump was more aware, and so on. And so what I'm predicting for the September 10th debate between Trump and Kamala Harris is something similar, but worse, in the sense that you don't have old age to lay back on for anything that Kamala stumbles over. She is supposed to be the younger, the more energetic, the more progressive, etc. If she comes out there and is as, or worse, coherent as she was on a tarmac, not being asked anything directly, if she's asked a direct question in those debates, something that's not necessarily a gotcha, but just on a policy question, and she does a whole bunch of pausing with grinning and cackling and going on, it'll be even worse. It'll be even worse because all you'll see afterwards is pictures of Trump looking over at her with like a look of, what? And Trump doesn't have to do any heavy lifting. Trump would be well advised to just let Kamala speak. And, as shovel-tongued as she can be, dig her own grave. It was actually kind of surprising, and I said this previously, on the Trump-Biden debate, how Trump was relatively restrained in making comments back to or about Biden. There was only like once or twice where like Biden said something and Trump said something to the effect of, I'm not quite sure what he said, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't know either. I think that's about as spiked a comment as Trump made about Biden during the entire debate. And Trump would be well advised to keep that kind of restraint handy and just let Kamala speak. Just let her speak. Because the more that they hold off her doing an interview, the worse it's going to look by the time she actually says something. Because there will be no preamble. There'll be no front loading of this. If her coming out party, so to speak, is the debate for all intents and purposes, everybody's going to be looking and everybody's going to be measuring what she says as her first time out. It's going to be something. So I'm in the next, like, whatever it is, 20 days or something until the debate. She had better do something, a press conference, an interview, something else to try to take the edge off by the time she gets to the debate, at least a little bit. But I don't know. We'll find out. But again, she's feeling a sense of liberation campaigning for herself rather than calibrating around Biden. This also means that she may be, and this is just implied here, rebelling against or filtering out any advice she might be getting from the Biden camp so that she's her own woman, which, has its ups and downs. We'll see. Quote, this is her clear voice. Sure. Okay. This is her clear voice. When she says, I will sign this into law, those are words she has never been able to speak before, said her deputy chief of staff, Aaron Wilson, who for the last 2 years helped manage many of Harris's political relationships. I don't know if that's a ringing endorsement of the quality of your work, Aaron Wilson. But yes. If she says, I will sign this into law, those are words she has never been able to, because she hasn't been a viable presidential candidate before. At least not since, she wasn't even a viable presidential candidate back in 2019. She utterly failed in that. So that Look at this. This says nothing. When she says, I will sign this into law, those are words she has never been able to speak before. Yeah, because as vice president, she doesn't have that ability. As president, she would, conceivably. That's quote, it was her job to be that strong partner, that Joe Biden needed in his administration, said Danielle Monroe Moreno, the Nevada Democratic Party chair and a state representative who has known Harris since before she was vice president. Quote, the spotlight is on her now, and this is her time. And you sense that she has a renewed sense of confidence. Yeah, it may be confidence built on sand, however, but she was never a strong partner for Joe Biden. She never was. I admit it. Okay, tell me one thing that Kamala Harris was able to bring to the Biden administration that no one else could have. What leverage did she bring to anything in particular? I keep being told that she's taken a strong front and center position on reproductive rights. Right. And I've always said, okay, great. Not that whether I want to vote for her or not, or support the Biden Harris ticket or just a Harris, whatever. Show me an example where Kamala Harris exemplified leadership in something, right? Whether she won or failed the fight, just show me a really good example of that. Show me where she went to a state where abortion rights are in limbo or they're completely in the opposite direction of her position. And she went behind the scenes and, twisted some elbows or tried to make some negotiations or whatever. And she actually moved the needle in her direction, whether it was significant enough to change a law or not. Just show me where she took the initiative and exemplified something of a leadership ability. I have looked, and you can find the playlist on my channel, the chaos over Kamala Harris or the ballad of Kamala Harris, whatever I called it. Article after article, instance after instance, looking at outlets that were even favorable to the Democratic Party. And I was just searching for, give me something. And it was always all this fluffy language and saying, behind the scenes, she's this and she does this, this, and this. No active examples. And when I finally got to an active example, it was like she was down in Louisiana and there was news about a robocaller that was putting out false information. And she's like, you guys should fix that. That was like her biggest contribution. A renewed sense of confidence. Okay, Harris is also reaping the benefits from years of a quietly revamped internal operation and a small circle of advisors she tends to meet with at her dining room table at the Naval Observatory. We've talked about this before in past stories. Yes, she's had many a dinner at the Naval Observatory with celebrities and influencers. And the results of those dinners have turned into what? I ask sincerely, what? Which remains the nexus of power, while the staff in the headquarters Biden established in Wilmington, Delaware, manages the campaign operations. So she's keeping a cloistered little private, nobody knows inner circle away, having dinners with celebrities, while everybody else does the work at the campaign offices. Okay. Those are the people she talks to. Those are the ones who, while the Biden campaign wasn't much testing what his running mate should say, were coming up with their own debate prep plans, which were already underway by the time Biden took the stage for his. I'm assuming they're talking about the vice presidential debate, not a presidential debate. They weren't already planning to ouster Biden before he actually was ousted, were they? That's some ambiguous language. Thank you, Fostonia. Holy cats. For the samurai trophy-wielding dogcat fox. Oh, dogcat.
Wowee. Wow, wow.
Oh, the very subdued tailed feature dogcat fox. A rare dogcat fox. Thank you, Fostonia, very much. It's very generous of you. Hope you're having a good day. And hope you're enjoying this recitation of the insider scoop on Kamala Harris. So far, CNN's not really giving a great impression. It's relatively neutral. And what's unsaid says a lot. A brain trust around her dinner table separate from Wilmington HQ. Unlike Harris's last campaign, which imploded in a swirl of self-doubt, second-guessing, and rival factions pulling and pushing her over ideas and wording, seems to be letting her off the hook of her own campaign fortunes. I'm sure that's not a pattern that will continue. This one has been defined by the shortness of the race. Yeah, it avoided that whole primary thing. She hasn't had time for any of the old lingering. She hasn't had time to try and work any new people into her circle of trust. Oh, so the brain trust that's been working so hard to keep her profile spotless over these last 3.5, 4 years is the same people we have for her presidential campaign now. Sounds good. The result, despite a politician who had developed a reputation for word salads and hedging herself into incomprehensibility, yeah, is the least message tested Democratic presidential campaign in decades. Sounds good. Rather than honing a stump speech over months on the trail, Harris had about 26 hours between finding out she'd be running and having to deliver hers for the first time at her new campaign headquarters in Wilmington, and it was carried live on national TV. You know what? Sorry for, I don't have to pause here for video stuff for YouTube, but I can't help myself. I have to give an endless amount of credit to CNN because in this case and in others recently, when it comes down to brass tacks, they really aren't or can't sugarcoat what's going on with Kamala Harris. And now the sirens are in the background because they're coming for me. They're coming to take me away. Haha. They're coming to take me away. I mean, credit where credit is due. CNN isn't really playing this up as a nothing burger. This is a pretty bleak profile, all things considered. Most of its paragraphs and themes, her speech, came right out of those prep sessions overseen by Harris's chief of staff, Lorraine Voles, and shaped by volunteer consultant wordsmith Sean Clegg, former policy advisor Rohoni Kosoglu, and longtime Democratic debate expert Karen Dunn. Overnight, Brian Fallon, who joined the orbit only in January as Harris's campaign communications director, scrapped together lines she had come up with and others they had helped craft for her. Boy, oh boy, it takes a lot of foundation to hold Harris up, doesn't it? Even what's become one of her trademarks, I know Donald Trump's type, is that, I honestly don't know. Is that a trademark now? Was a last-minute revision. Quote, I want to say something like, I know his type, but more eloquent, unquote, Harris said, standing in a hold room in Wilmington, looking over the prepared paragraphs about her prosecutorial record, according to people in the room. Okay, hold on. You were a lawyer for some time, right? You were a prosecutor for some time. I mean, part of your job was trying to, I don't know, enunciate to a jury the facts of a case and make an argument towards swaying their opinion in your direction and so on. And you say, I want to say something like, I know his type. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just too idealistic about these things. If you are a prosecuting attorney, if you've gone through years and years of law school, you've conducted criminal trials, you're the attorney general for a state, and on and on and on, you should also be at least a passable writer on your own merit, right? Writing your own opening and closing statements, being able to think on your feet in the moment of interrogating a witness or doing cross-examination or doing discovery, whatever. And she's standing there ready to give this speech, and she's like, I want to say something like, I know his type, but more eloquent. How about, I know Donald Trump's type? Wow. Just say that. I know Donald Trump's type, her communications director, Kirsten Allen, said back. By the time she was doing her run-up to it at a Philadelphia rally 2 weeks later, the crowd started cheering before she even got to the punchline. The punchline? What punchline? I'm bewildered. What's the punchline? There's a joke? What? Okay, to Anita Dunn, the recently departed top Biden advisor, how Harris is coming across on the trail should be a surprise only to those who hadn't been watching her diligent efforts to reboot. I've been watching her diligent efforts for a couple of years now, and all of this surprises me because everybody seems to be just blissfully and willfully ignorant or amnesiac of how nothing she's been for 3.5, near on 4 years now. But okay. Harris's set of experiences, Dunn said, lend her two particular advantages in this moment. Okay, by all means. Quote, there is nothing that prepares you to run for president like running for president. I mean, I suppose that's true. And she's had that experience once and she failed utterly. She couldn't carry her own state in the primaries and she wasted $40 million on an utterly disastrous presidential campaign. So one would hope she learned some lessons from that. I'll grant you that. Even in failure, you can learn something. Okay. So yes, there is nothing that prepares you to run for president like running for president. Okay, she has that experience. And she has the experience of being on the campaign trail with Biden for the actual campaign. Okay. All right. And the second one, 2, she has been vice president for 3.5 years, and that gives her a depth and foundation to run from that is difficult to replicate, unquote, Dunn said. Did any of this experience in presidential campaigning, either for herself or for Biden, did any of that experience inform her that she should speak to the press, give an interview, define her platform and policy positions before taking the stage, before selecting her vice presidential candidate? Any of that? Quote, and she doesn't have the usual problems that vice presidents do of being seen as more of the same because she so clearly is communicating change, unquote. Why? Change? She's coming from the Biden administration. What policies of the Biden administration has she secretly been in conflict over all these years? What change? I mean, she's starting to get there by parroting Trump's positions and talking about price controls. Forced out of her early psychological bunker. Look how attractive all this is from CNN. Bruised and brewing from her first year as vice president. Why was she, by the way? Harris didn't trust Biden's West Wing aides. She didn't trust reporters. She didn't trust her own instincts. Does she have any? And if she did, maybe she's right not to. How did her presidential campaign go again? The plan was to gear up for a 2028 run that boxed out primary opposition. Well, primary opposition was non-existent here, so nothing to worry about on that score. The main component was getting Harris out of the psychological bunker she had retreated to. Why did she retreat to a psychological? How weak is she? She faced opposition and criticism, and legitimate, in my opinion, in a lot of cases, and she retreated to a psychological bunker. What's going to happen when she finally has to face the press as a presidential candidate? Holy cats. Kiro Soldier, thank you so much. Scribe, you're assuming she has a functional brain. Whether she has a functional brain or not, if she's going to reject the entire infrastructure that brought her into prominence in the first place, that being the Biden team. And I'm not saying the Biden team is golden or anything, but it's all she's had access to this whole time. She's going to trust her own instincts and the team that has brought her to the point of practical irrelevancy up until about a month and a half ago. Okay. Makes one wonder how everybody is just fooling themselves into thinking she's so great right now. Except for she's not Trump. Just remember, guys, she's not Trump is a very strong selling point. It may put her into the White House. Voles, an aide with presidential experience going back to the Clinton years and who had the trust of Dunn, joined as an advisor in the summer of the first year, trying to tweak the chaos. Tweak the chaos into what? Different chaos? Voles' elevation to chief of staff in April 2022 reflected Harris's recognition that she needed a reboot that went deeper than replacing the top press aides and others who had already cycled through. Yeah, this was covered in part in that previous article that I talked about a couple of years ago. And again, this is all before Biden dropping out was even a twinkle in anybody's eye at that point. Some of the changes were operational, such as merging the scheduling and advance teams or building up an in-house online outreach operation. Okay, and that was 2 years ago now. What of what advantage were any of these changes up until the point where she became the nominee? Well, presumed nominee. Some were strategic, like forcing Harris to agree to more interviews despite her resistance. Both to get her more practice and to dilute the impact when she inevitably made mistakes. Yes, this is what I was talking about earlier. You really want to be able to do something before the debate. You do not want the debate to be the primary coming out party for Kamala Harris on the public stage. You really don't. You want to have her doing some interviews and press conferences ahead of time. Every day that there is not an interview or major press conference with Kamala Harris is setting her up for even more problems by the time you get to the debate. Some were about injecting a different spirit. There's different ways you could take that depending on the context. Aides talked about needing to remember who she was. You need to remind her who she... What? The strengths that put her on the ticket to begin with, the only strengths that put her on the ticket were her gender and her ethnicity. That's it. It wasn't her political acumen. It wasn't the state she was going to carry with her that she did so in the primaries. What brought her to the ticket? Her gender, her ethnicity. Biden told us this publicly before he even selected her. What else was putting her in that position? Okay, the strengths that put her on the ticket to begin with and her ability to connect with voters once she stepped out of the background. She didn't connect with anybody for 3.5 years. By late summer 2022, with COVID-19 fading and Biden largely finishing a legislative agenda that had often kept Harris in Washington on standby to break ties in the Senate, which is really only her job aside from that whole 25th Amendment thing, she told aides she wanted to be on the road at least 2 days a week. Wow, and most Saturdays ahead of the midterms. Biden had given Harris the portfolios of the root causes of migration and voting rights. Yeah, how much time did she focus on that first one after 2021? How much, aside from a couple of trips overseas and do not come in Venezuela or whatever it was, what has she done with that? Voting rights. What has she done? What has she accomplished with? How has she moved the needle on voting rights? I'm asking sincerely. I don't know. And I haven't heard. But after the Supreme Court's decision overturning Roe v. Wade, she had quickly identified herself as the face for the fight for abortion rights. And on that same score, what has she accomplished? She and aides zeroed in on other issues that likewise spoke to the Democratic base, such as, and specifically the rising generation, climate, small business, and maternal health. Okay, and again, CNN, please tell me, under all of those subjects, what has she actually accomplished? Or what efforts has she given that are notable? Aides turned Harris's abortion rights focus into its own organizing tool. Though there were a few rallies, she more often took meetings in Washington. You mean dinners at the Naval Observatory? Or on the road with groups of faith leaders and state legislators. To do what? All aimed to have attendees walk away with a warmer impression of her. Wait. That was the goal? That was the goal. So she did some rallies. She took meetings about abortion rights or any of the other subjects above, not to move the needle on those subjects, but all aimed to have attendees walk away with a warmer impression of her. Speeches hadn't been going well for Harris, so aides shifted to moderated conversations to draw her out in front of friendly crowds, hoping for moments they could clip and post. You know, when you have to keep your fingers crossed that your candidate is going to say something worth crowing about, I got to tell you, CNN is damning with faint praise here, and I love them for it. They're not being too pointed. They're saying what they know and reporting what they've heard. Guests who Wilson, the deputy chief of staff, and other aides identified as likely future convention delegates or potential primary opponents were booked onto Air Force Two. Every airport arrival was stacked with officials for her to greet. Every photo line after events was curated with local politicians, business owners, student leaders. Receptions at the Naval Observatory ramped up to the point that by Christmas 2023, she had 2.5 weeks of sometimes multiple events per day. Chosen crowds coming through for a hot chocolate bar, a photo with her and First Gentleman Doug Emhoff, and a souvenir apron. Boy, you guys remember all those? Golly gee whiz, those were just the television events of the century. Remember all those Naval Observatory events with the vice president, with all of those curated crowds and souvenir aprons? Boy, yeah, those really marked the time, didn't they? Quote, when you're building a car, if you put the gas in the tank, it's going to move, said Megan Jones, a veteran of the Harry Reid machine in Nevada who worked on Harris's last campaign, then joined her office in 2022 as an advisor to help manage her politics. Quote, we just needed the gas because we built it, unquote. Well, here's the thing. If the car has no engine and no functioning tires, you can put all the gas you want into the tank. It ain't going nowhere. What is Kamala Harris's engine? Her own self-image, it sounds like. Jones came up with the idea of branding Harris with college tours and organized them with new senior advisor Stephanie Young. The tours provided not just built-in audiences, yeah, it's all just very curated, isn't it? And a way to make multiple stops around the same theme, but also put the vice president in front of a group that would make up a larger share of the electorate by the time Harris's team was expecting the next primaries. But of course, all of this was done prior to her being an actual presidential candidate. Okay, the vice president would often talk about how college students had other places they could go and professors lecturing to them. Quote, they get that in their college classes all day, Harris said at one point, according to an aide. Yeah, and so aides responded that meant Harris was going to have to learn how to be entertaining. Well, what lessons has she learned in that realm since then? They stressed message discipline, repetition, hitting easy themes like freedom, and talking less about the bills Biden passed than their specific provisions. Her godchildren, Harris would say in meetings, had no idea what the Inflation Reduction Act was, but they knew about replacing lead pipes and tax credits for buying electric cars. Wow, you mean not just saying the name of an act, but talking about what it's going to do? Yeah, what a novel idea. Boy, oh boy. Nobody's ever thought of that before. More conversations on the road made her more anxious at what Biden was saying wasn't resonating. He wasn't speaking to people in ways that they wanted to be spoken to, she'd say, according to advisors. Well, I can't wait to hear more of how Kamala knows other people want to be spoken to, as in what fashion. Throughout, Voles, who had a campaign communications background, backed the new press team's efforts to push Harris out more. They abandoned an early decision that she shouldn't speak to reporters off the record on Air Force Two because Biden did only sometimes. They abandoned an early decision that she shouldn't speak to reporters off the record. So she's been speaking to reporters off the record about what? I mean, obviously we can't know because it's off the record. So has she been the someone familiar with the matter close to the Biden campaign that's been like permeating things prior to his dropping out? That would be something. That would be something. So too with the general rule against doing local interviews when Harris's press secretary, Ernie Apreza, made them a pet push. She's done local interviews? What? Quote, POTUS doesn't do local interviews because it muddles the message, one aide warned, according to memories of the conversation. Quote, POTUS is POTUS, another aide responded. Quote, we don't have that luxury, unquote. Harris put in her own request, more drive time radio. But mostly they stayed away from traditional political interviews and toward influencer conversations and targeted constituency media, such as podcasts. Yes, tell me more of these very memorable podcast influencer interviews. Several aides acknowledged now to CNN they were building, quote, echo chambers, unquote. Yeah, don't say. Yeah, going along with curated events, with curated audiences, handpicking the influencers you'll talk to with softball interviews, questions, and otherwise. You're building echo chambers? You're only now realizing this? Well, I'm glad. Less than 100 days out from the election, I'm glad you guys are realizing this. The little data Harris advisors had. The little data? Little data? You mean they didn't have access to, I don't know, years upon years of information that's been gathered up at least since the Obama administration? The little data Harris advisors had, including a round of focus groups conducted in the early spring, confirmed what they had assumed. She was doing better among the young voters, black voters, and Latino voters with whom Biden was struggling. Looking at data from Michigan, Wisconsin, and Nevada, they could see the efforts paying off. How? Harris knew if Biden lost to Trump, her political career would probably be finished too. And that's really the most important thing, remember. Kamala Harris's appearance, Kamala Harris's ongoing career. Steve Thomas, thank you again. Influencer interviews equals harassing streamers. Yeah, pretty much. You know what, Kamala Harris, if you're out there listening, and I know you're not, I will interview you. I will interview. I'm nobody. No one will pay attention. You can do I'll do a full-fledged interview with you, and nobody will pay attention, and you can say for sure that you did an interview. I promise. I'll be gentle. I'm not a very, hey, I'll give you this. I'm not a very good interviewer. I have little data about how much to interview or how well to interview somebody. Already I'm stumbling over my own words. You and I'll fit in right fine together. Just come on. I'll interview you. I'll be the guy. No pressure. You know, I'm not a professional. You can say you did it. You can check that box off your resume. Did an interview right there. Quote, our two destinies are tied, unquote. She told advisors a few times, several recounted. Yeah, well, that's what you signed on for. Yeah, Voles and campaign chief of staff Sheila Nix tried to guide tried to guide Harris and the others aides along that balance. Yet even through July, worries among some Biden aides that she'd flop were intense enough to be among the factors keeping him from dropping out. They weren't the only ones. Through the spring, multiple top Democratic operatives were still so skeptical of Harris and her staff's abilities that they were telling CNN they doubted she would have been able to survive the Democratic primaries in 2028. Context is everything for this run, and that's especially true of Harris's laugh. For years, Republicans and supportive media outlets caricatured it as forced. You don't have to, look, no one has to work too hard to caricature that laugh. Often, political opponents refer to it as a cackle. Yes, now her campaign is promoting it as emblematic of the joyous spirit she is trying to project. Well, then I'll tell you what. I will tell you what. Harris campaign, have I got some artwork for you? Okay, I cooked this up just the other day. All right, it is perfect. You're embracing it. I got you covered. Harris Waltz, if you're listening, I got you covered. It's right here. It's right here. Look at that. It's brilliant. Don't you think? Don't you think? That is the perfect campaign post. You will own it. Just own it. Own the cackle. Own it. Put it up everywhere. Okay, the power just flickered here. I don't know if that's now going to make my stream stop. Am I still broadcasting? Somebody in the chat, let me know real quick. Let me know. I don't know if something just went goofy. You're still here. Okay. The lights just flickered relatively dramatically. I don't know if that means a light bulb's going out or No. Okay. Well, if I suddenly disappear, it may be the case that my power went out. Anyway, for years, Republicans and supportive media outlets caricatured it as forced. Often, political opponents referred to it as a cackle. Now her campaign is promoting it as emblematic of the joyous spirit she is trying to project. Quote, the quirks and her humor and the way that she presents, unquote, said Robert Garcia, the freshman California congressman who got close to his then junior senator when he was still the mayor of Long Beach. Quote, people today are finding endearing and hopeful. What people? How many people is people? Is it her immediate inner circle that are just crossing their fingers and gritting their teeth that she can fake her way through the rest of this campaign? That's what it feels like to me, but what do I know? What do I know? Yeah, so there you go. That's our first story. I spent nearly an hour on one article. I thought that article was shorter. I thought I'd have less to say. I gotta warn myself off from. If I'm ever going to do any more Kamala Harris stories, they have to be their own streams. They just have to be their own streams. There you go. Again, in limited capacity, I have to give CNN credit. This was no sugarcoating propaganda piece. This was portents of a disaster. A disaster. But again, none of this is a surprise to me, and none of it makes me think that Kamala has a zero chance of becoming president. The next 20 days are going to be crucial. What is she going to do in the next 20 days or so before the debate? If she does no major interviews, if she does no press conferences, if the only time the entire country gets to see Kamala Harris in the public square, unfiltered, is at a debate with Donald Trump, I mean, I'm kind of hoping that is the case. I would love it if the very first time we really see Kamala in full bloom, let's say, is at that debate. That would be great. That would be great. That'd be something. Oh man, she's so reluctant to do interviews. She doesn't want to go out without a teleprompter. She doesn't want to do unscripted stuff. She doesn't want to do things without a curated audience. Not good signs. Not good signs. Anyway, take a couple of seconds here for whatever you guys have to say. Cackle Harris 2024. Exactly. Roasted opinions. Are they sampling San Francisco to find these people? Yeah. Well, I don't know. CNN, I guess they're working with what they got. Really, they don't have to go find people outside the inner circle. Just the things that people who are supportive of Harris are saying alone are questionable. Again, how many articles, and I'm asking rhetorically, but if you want to know, go to my playlist. How many articles, how many stories have I read on Kamala Harris over the last 3 years where supportive individuals, people who are on her side, were interviewed and asked questions and things, and you'd be forgiven for thinking there isn't a single hard example to be provided of Kamala Harris accomplishing something or acting in a leadership role of her own volition, because no one could come up with any. And all these different articles, I kept looking specifically. Somebody tell me, of all the people who are complimentary of Kamala Harris and her abilities, give me an example where she accomplished something, anything, or put honest effort into something and failed in her a role as a vice president or as a leader, anything. It doesn't come up. It just doesn't come up. C. Thomas, did you see the video of Don Lemon getting laughed at by some New Jersey resident for trying to gas? Oh, yeah. The part where, like, well, the economy's better now than under Trump. And he's like, BS. Anybody who has to pay for their own food, unlike Don Lemon, nobody believes that. Nobody believes that. He was doing his level best to push the idea. Boy, don't you know the economy's better now than it was under Trump? Really? How much is gas under Biden? How much is our groceries under Biden? Let me tell you this. I don't know if I mentioned this previously. About a month ago. It was only just about a month ago. I decided to splurge, not so much in the cost area of things, but just as a treat, I was like, I'm going to go get some Jack in the Box. I haven't had Jack in the Box in like 6 months. I really want a cheeseburger. I just want a good old, not good for you double cheeseburger and fries. That's it. Double cheeseburger and fries. So I walked, because I have to walk. I walked to Jack in the Box, and I go in there and I say, I want an ultimate double cheeseburger with fries, large fries. I didn't even look at the register as she's ringing it up. And she says, 1804. 1804 for a double cheeseburger and fries from Jack in the Box. And I'm thinking to myself, and maybe my mind is just stuck too far in the past. But when I think of going out to dinner, like two people just going out to dinner, nothing super fancy, just a nice dinner, I'm thinking you're probably going to pay somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 to $50, right? $20 to $25 per person. Something like that. Okay, maybe I'm being too idealistic, but generally speaking, classically, you're looking to spend about $40 to $50 for a two-person decent meal. Nothing extravagant. 1804 for a cheeseburger and fries all by myself at a fast food joint? And you want to tell me, Don Lemon, that the economy now is better than it was under Trump? I don't know what to tell you. That is not the sign of a good economy. If I can't get a burger and fries for under $10 at a fast food joint. Anyway, let me move on. I meant to move on already, but let's move on to the next article. I promise. Well, I can't promise. Who knows what'll happen? I'm pretty sure it won't take as long as the first article, but still something I found interesting this week because it calls back to me of some videos I've done in the past on a little playlist on my channel called Expatriate Games, specifically talking about immigration, legal and otherwise, under the Trump administration and some later on under the Biden administration. And this just brought back so many memories of my early videos in the Expatriate Games playlist. Immigrants prepare for new Biden protections with excitement and concern. This is from the AP from August 17th. From Miami, Roberto Garcia crossed the border from Mexico in 2009, 15 years ago, looking for a better life. For the past 8 years, he has been married to an American woman, and they have 3 kids who are all American citizens. The only one in the family who is not is Garcia. Yes, Roberto Garcia has been living in the United States illegally for 15 years. He married a citizen and had 3 children with this citizen, and he's still here. 7 years ago, so under the Trump administration, he applied to legalize his status through a process that, if approved, would still require him to return to Mexico with no guarantee that he would be allowed back into the United States. Yeah, you actually have to effectively restart your process for trying to come here legally. And there's no guarantee, especially since you've spent 15 years avoiding the authorities on this. The possibility of being separated from his family or, in a worst-case scenario, being unable to return home to Los Angeles has been stressful. Well, whose fault is that? Who has placed this Damocles sword above your family's head? Might I ask? What sympathy shall I extend someone who knowingly and willingly put his wife and his oncoming children at the time under that threat of being broken up? Gosh, I wonder who made that choice of their own volition. So has the wait been stressful. It has been 7 years, and Garcia has not yet gotten an appointment at the U.S. consulate in Ciudad Juarez, just across the border in Mexico. He's not gotten an appointment because he has chosen not to, or because he hasn't been granted one. I'm not quite sure how I'm supposed to read that. Now, a Biden administration program launching Monday will allow some spouses of U.S. citizens without legal permission to stay in the U.S. to legalize their status without leaving the country. That is giving Garcia and others like him new hope. Yes, so Roberto Garcia wants a free pass for living in violation of federal law for 15 years and putting his wife and children at risk of losing a parent and spouse because of his own decisions. Boo to the WHO. Quote, finally, there is a light that this is possible, the 37-year-old said. I imagine I will soon have the important documents that so many people want to have. Why? Why do you deserve them? You cheated. You broke the law. You lied and hid for years. Why should you get them? The new program offers a rare opportunity to erase the threat of deportation and one day earn citizenship. But tempering that excitement is concern. Who will benefit from what has been described as the most expansive U.S. protections for immigrants? No, stop. There is a word missing from this, AP. What is that word? What word should exist right there in that little blue sliver between for and immigrants? What should that word be? Anybody got any guesses as to what that word should be, if we're being honest about this? Yeah, the word is illegal. Criminal, if you want to be even more pointed about it. What has been described as the most expansive U.S. protections for illegal immigrants in over a decade? Will the program face legal challenges? You bet your bippy it will, because extending amnesty to illegal immigrants and giving the incentive to any oncoming illegal immigrants that all they have to do is knock up some American person to stay forever, not a good look. And most important, will it survive the presidential election? I guess it depends. But even if it does survive the presidential election, there's no guarantee it's going to actually take effect or not be legally challenged into effectively not ever happening. But anyway, under the policy Democratic President Joe Biden announced in June, many spouses without legal status, many spouses who are here illegally. I love how this massaging of the language to deny reality and somehow give a pass to people's willful actions is still amazes me, even after all this time. Many spouses without legal status, will be able to apply for something called parole in place, offering permission to stay in the U.S., apply for a green card, and eventually get on a path to citizenship. To be eligible, they must have been continuously in the U.S. for at least 10 years. So remember, guys, if you're trying to get into the country illegally, you just have to avoid authority for 10 years. Not pose a security threat. You mean aside from like breaking into the country illegally and subverting, border patrol? It's not a security threat. Or have a disqualifying criminal history. A disqualifying criminal history. Okay, so violating federal law and breaking into the country illegally and residing in the country illegally and working in the country illegally for up to 10 years doesn't disqualify you. Okay, well, as long as I know that. And have been married to a citizen by June 17th, the day before the program was announced. Well, thankfully, that means that anybody coming in now can't take advantage of it by getting hitched to somebody in a sham wedding in Las Vegas, thankfully. But they must pay a $580 fee, oh my God, to apply and fill out a lengthy application, including an explanation of why they deserve humanitarian parole and a long list of supporting documents proving how long they have been in the country. How long they have been in the country. How long have you avoided the authorities? Is it at least 10 years? You might be a winner. They apply to the Department of Homeland Security and, if approved, have 3 years to seek permanent residency. During that period, they can get work authorization. I mean, aside from the previous decade where they were working without authorization, which, of course, doesn't impugn their ability to apply for citizenship now, for some reason. The administration estimates about 500,000 people could be eligible, plus about 50,000 of their children. Great. Yeah, so 500,000 people. Well, that's only about a fourth of the number of illegal immigrants that we know of have entered the country since Biden took office. or at least within the last year or something. The numbers are so staggering at this point. I can't remember. Was it 2 million people just last year, or was it 2 million people during the course of the Biden? I think it was 2 million people last year, or the last 6 months, or something. I don't know. Before this program, it was complicated for people who were in the U.S. illegally. Oh my God, AP, you did it. You did it. Oh my God. It only took you the entire article to get to that word. It was complicated for people who are in the U.S. illegally to get a green card after marrying an American citizen, as it should be. And by complicated, I mean illegal unto itself. They can be required to return to their home country, often for years, and they always face the risk they may not be allowed back in. Well, that's the least we could do to someone who comes into the country illegally and then tries to marry somebody in order to turn them into an anchor. News of Biden's program set off a flurry of activity nationwide as couples checked whether they were eligible. Honey, how long have you been in the country illegally now? 11 years. Oh, we might be in good shape. Immigrant groups, you mean illegal immigrant groups, have reached out to help people understand the program and battle misinformation. Some launched radio ads. Hello, friends. Have you been hiding in the country illegally for over a decade? You may be eligible to live here legally as long as you've knocked somebody up in the meantime. Quote, there's definitely a lot of interest, but also a lot of concern, said Carolina Castaneda, a staff attorney, with the Immigrant Legal Resource Center in California's Central Valley. Activists and lawyers say they and applicants are weighing whether it is a risk to apply. Yeah, you would have to expose yourself to federal authorities as someone who has been in the country illegally. Maybe it's a trap. It could be a trap. But yes, you would have to actually admit to your crime to even come close to qualifying for this. If the program will survive possible Republican lawsuits, and what happens if Republican Donald Trump, who has vowed to deport millions of immigrants, is back in the White House. Yes, if you expose yourself to federal authorities as someone who's been in the country illegally for at least a decade, and this doesn't go through, your name and your information and vital statistics are still out there for the next administration to use to deport you. So what are you going to do? Roll the dice, guys. There has been far more hesitancy compared with the excitement that greeted the launch of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, or DACA, which protected people brought to the country as children from deportation, said Carla Aguayo, Director of Legal Services at CHIRLA, the Los Angeles-based Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights. When DACA was announced in 2012, she said thousands of people lined up outside the organization's office. For the new program, it has just been a few couples. Well, here's the thing. In 2012, Obama was still president, and he was still going to be president, probably. So people weren't too hazy about the idea that it might all be rescinded. Now, in an election year where it's not quite certain who's going to be president next, yeah, I can see people being reluctant to expose themselves to authorities for their illegal conduct. They're all going to wait till Kamala's president before they do anything because they know what they're doing is illegal and they know the consequences. While DACA had a much bigger applicant pool, the immigrant community has seen how these policies get caught up in the courts. Yeah, as they should. Quote, people are like, this is nice, but how long will it last? She said. I don't know. How long does a presidential fiat that's not actually law last in the country? Well, at least since 2012, DACA's still here, even though it should have been dropped and the DREAM Act should have gotten a vote. Trump tried to make that happen, but they wouldn't let him. You know, Trump, that guy who's so all-powerful that he was going to destroy the country. Yeah. The organization has posted information about the new program online and held information sessions and one-on-one appointments with clients. Those likely to qualify can come back Monday to apply. The eligible couples are excited, she said, quote, coming with an accordion file of documents that they want reviewed, unquote. See, here's my first receipt of buying a bottle of water at a gas station on the border when I crossed the border the first time illegally. This tells you on the date at which I started being in the country illegally, and it's at least 10 years. But she said her group is discovering that a majority of people it sees will not qualify. Do tell. One of the biggest reasons, many return to their home country at some point, often for big life events like a dying family member, and re-entry makes them ineligible. Uh-oh, did they break the law by coming into the country illegally more than once? Yeah, it's almost like if there's no consequences to that activity, then you kind of have no reason not to do it again. Until now. For Maria Zambrano, the possibility that Trump wins the presidential election and ends the policy adds to the urgency. Quote, "We have to react as soon as possible and apply as soon as possible," said the 56-year-old resident of Bal Harbor, Florida. She came to the U.S. from Colombia in 2001 and has not gone back. She works as a Spanish language tutor and has her own company. 7 years ago, she married a U.S. citizen and, like Garcia, applied for legal status, but still has to interview at a U.S. consulate in Colombia. She has been waiting for that appointment for more than 2 years. Now she has a chance to avoid the risky trip out of the U.S. Now she has a chance to avoid the consequences of her actions. Immigrants who, unlike Garcia and Zambrano, are not already on the government's radar may fear the risk of applying, especially if Trump is president. His administration would know who and where they are, said Charles Cuck. Charles Cuck? His name is Chuck Cuck? That sounds like a garbage pail kid. Oh no. Oh no, I feel bad for this guy. I feel bad for this. This guy had to grow up with that name. Oh no. Chuck Cuck. No. Oh, okay. As a kid who was picked on, made fun of, name called, belittled, I can't help but laugh, but I have endless sympathy for Chuck Cuck. I do. I really do. I'm laughing, but I do. Oh, man. If I'm laughing at it, can you imagine? Oh, anyway, quote, "Is there a risk associated with this? 100%, Cuck said." Oh. When you need legal representation getting across the border, call Cuck. Garcia and Zambrano already are thinking about how this opportunity can change their lives. Garcia and his 44-year-old wife, Maria, have an appointment with their immigration attorney the day after the government begins accepting applications on Monday. I assume this means this coming Monday, so tomorrow. Maria, who had an accident a year ago and cannot work, said, quote, "My biggest fear is that he won't be able to come back," unquote, if Garcia travels to Ciudad Juarez. As the family's sole breadwinner, you know, I feel, and I can't count how many times I made this point in the videos I did previously. You know, I feel the worst about in these situations, the kids, these innocent kids who had no choice. They were born to their parents, born in the country. I had no idea and had nothing to do with their parents, whether it's the father, mother, or both, coming to the country illegally. They have unwittingly and against their own benefit been put at risk of losing one or, in some situations, both parents in some way because they chose to break the law and then chose, on top of that, to put their family in peril because of their choices, knowingly. So you've got a wife who can't work, and you have the husband who's the sole breadwinner, and the husband is the one here illegally. So if he does have to pay for his choices, and he should, who is punished? Who's really punished after that? The children. And whose fault is that? His. As the family's sole breadwinner and the one who does things like take the kids to school, Garcia said he cannot take that risk even if he were to finally get an appointment. So he'll just continue to live in the country illegally and then eventually, probably, be deported if Trump wins. And then what happens? If you want to protect your family and you want to try to protect your children, and you don't want to risk just being sent away forever without any chance of coming back, I don't know, maybe I'd follow the rules for once. Maybe I'd have to just, face the music. And the worst thing that can possibly happen is I end up having to stay in my home country and send money back to my family as I work for their betterment in the circumstances I've placed myself in and subjected them to. Maybe you have to face the music as a man and as a father. I don't know. Be a good example for your children as to what happens when you make a mistake and you have to pay the consequences. That's just me, though, but what do I know? As for Zambrano, she will be able to travel home to visit her parents and brothers. She can get a driver's license, health insurance, a house, and maybe even vote one day. Garcia, who said he has paid taxes since 2010 and is studying for his contractor's license, great, also dreams of what he can do with a green card. On the top of his mind, going to Mexico to see his parents and 7 brothers for the first time in 15 years. Yeah, after abandoning them there. Quote, "It's been many years of not seeing them, not talking to them face to face," Garcia said. "I try not to think about it," unquote. And whose fault is it? Who am I supposed to feel sorry for in this article? Whose sympathies am I supposed to, resonate with? Just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, apparently this photo here, this is the guy. This is Roberto Garcia and his 2 children. So these are the kids that are going to suffer one way or the other as a consequence of their father's actions and decisions. And as well, unless he was lying to her the whole time, their mother's decision to marry the guy knowing he was in the country illegally. I don't hold the parents harmless in this at all. Never do. Never do. You chose to put your family under this threat, and you made it persist for years. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Let's see. What do you guys have to say? Vote one day. Well, I mean, if you become a legalized citizen, you vote one day. One day you may get the vote. Andy Maston, personal responsibility is so patriarchal. I know. Got to smash the patriarchy. You have to smash consequence for actions. Personal responsibility. Yeah, that's the man talking. That's the man talking. Remember, if you run into consequences that you brought about to yourself, you can't do much better than Chuck Cuck. Just saying. Chuck Cuck will. Yeah. All right. Well, as to go to a little bit more infuriation, I wanted to sandwich this in between a couple articles because I couldn't avoid this one. But I will not be surprised if one of my true crime content creator friends decides to take on this story for a video in the very near future. Former Rochester police officer sentenced to 10 weekends in jail for raping a 13-year-old. Let's pause for a second there. 10 weekends in jail. So the rest of the week is like, it's like a little, just 10 weekends. Otherwise he's free to roam and do whatever the heck he wants otherwise. I'm going to try this. I don't know about this one. Canandaigua. Or Canandaigua. New York. A former Rochester police officer who pleaded guilty in March to rape and forcible touching, was sentenced Wednesday to 10 weekends in jail and 10 years of probation. Sean Jordan admitted to having sex with a 13-year-old girl at his South Bristol home in 2022. He was arrested in September of 2023, 6 months after he was charged in a separate case for allegedly exposing himself to a 16-year-old girl in an online video chat while he was still with the Rochester Police Department. The department suspended Jordan without pay the same day he was arrested for these allegations. At sentencing on Wednesday, the Ontario County judge expressed shock at Jordan's actions, saying, quote, "I have no words," unquote. Well, I'm expressing shock at the sentence. Please explain to me how you were, Judge, constrained into 10 weekends of prison. Quote, I'm thankful that it's over for the victim and her family who are here today in court, said Kelly Wolford, Assistant District Attorney of Ontario. It's over for them? It's over for them. 10 weekends, and he's otherwise free to roam the earth, and then 10 years of probation. And it's over for the family and the victim? The 13-year-old. It's over. Oh, you're glad it's over, said Kelly Wolford, Assistant District Attorney of Ontario County. Quote, I'm not entirely satisfied with the sentence. Then why did you accept it, Assistant District Attorney of Ontario County Kelly Wolford? And it was my recommendation, and the court indicated that she was going to impose 10 weeks of jail plus 10 years of probation. But ultimately, as a prosecutor, I have to weigh things like the impact of actually having to testify on the victim of this crime, and she was a child, and she was going to have to base her accuser, it says base, but I think they mean face her accuser in the courtroom. So based on the potential fear or trauma that may be incurred by the victim, you're going to let a child rapist get away with it on 10 weekends. That is supposed to add to easing the victim out of her trauma? Really? That this person gets, I don't even want to call it a slap on the wrist, a flick of the ear. This guy got a flick of the ear for this, and you think that's going to make it better? The judge said Jordan's actions violated the public's trust, adding she feels he deserves prison. Yet she says the sentencing conditions were necessary to spare the child from having to testify in court. You have a sworn officer of the law raping a 13-year-old girl, and you think a commensurate sentence for this person, this figure in the community, is 10 weekends in jail, and your excuse is, well, we don't want her testifying in court. Great, then send him to 10 years in prison at the low end. 10 weekends and then parole. So this is the benefit of a scared child. Remember, guys, just remember, if there's a criminal out there who wants to effectively walk on the most inhumane crimes you can think of, all you have to do is make sure the witness is intimidated. Okay, guys, that's it. That's it. And make sure that the state will affirm the intimidation of the witness. That's all you gotta do. Just make sure you pick someone who is so innocent that they will be scared to testify, or the adults around them don't even want to risk doing it, and you'll just get a flick of the ear. Matt Barnes, thank you so much. Just like the line change in the Dead Kennedys cover, if I fought the law, quote, I fought the law, so I won. I am the law, so I won. Pardon my French, but fucking disgusting. I know. No need to pardon it. No need to pardon it. Quote, this is an ultimate tragedy because these parents trusted him, unquote, Wolford said. Quote, he's a police officer, and if we can't trust the police, then who can we trust? Obviously not the Assistant District Attorney of Ontario County or the judge overseeing this case, that this was an acceptable consequence for this crime. It's a very difficult situation. I'm a parent of 3 children myself, and it's one of those circumstances where you just look at it and say, there by the grace of God go I. No, it's the quote is actually, there but for the grace of God go I. Yeah. What if your own kid had been the victim of this guy? You think 10 weekends in prison would satisfy you? because this was a child who trusted somebody, and he was an adult who knew better, unquote. Yeah, and on top of that, a sworn officer of the law. But 10 weekends is okay, all right. The victim's family attended Wednesday's sentencing. Her mother said Jordan's actions, quote, ruined her daughter's life, unquote, and said he, quote, doesn't deserve to be out on the street. Oh, but remember what the assistant district attorney said. I'm thankful that it's over for the victim and her family who are here today in court. Well, I'm glad, Kelly Wolford, that you've decided for the victim and her family that it's over, when if you actually talk to the victim and her family, her life is ruined and he doesn't deserve to be out on the street. But he will be Monday through Friday for the next 10 weekends, and then on parole or probation, pardon me, for the next 10 years. Jordan will have to register as a sex offender, abide by an order of protection for the victim and her family, and pay more than $1,000 in fines. According to prosecutor, boy, oh boy, $1,000 for 10 weekend trips to prison. Boy, howdy. How wonderful. It's great. That's really balancing the scales, everybody. Kelly Wolford, in particular, should be ashamed of herself. Ashamed to say something like that. I'm thankful that it's over for the victim and her family who are here today in court. Here's our winner. Our winner of the lottery of intimidating a witness. Our winner of the nanny state in authorizing witness intimidation to benefit a defendant in a criminal trial. Here you go. Here's the guy. Just so everybody knows. Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Just anyway. Okay, well, with that aside, let's get to our last story. Let's get to our last story. Let's humor things up a little bit. Or at least, look at the folly of an idiot. But let's see what happens to somebody that, commits a much more terrible crime. Wyoming reporter caught using artificial intelligence to create fake quotes and stories. I always, when I read stories like this or hear things like this, I always think back to Stephen Glass from the New Republic. There's a great little movie just called Shattered Glass, starring Hayden Christensen when he's not playing Anakin Skywalker, showing off that given a role where he actually has to play a character and is given some direction and given some material to work with, Hayden Christensen can be an effective actor. Kind of a sad state of affairs, honestly speaking. But anyway, yeah, Shattered Glass, really good movie. Take a look at it if you haven't. This is from August 14th. Quotes from Wyoming's governor and local prosecutor were the first things that seemed slightly off to Powell Tribune reporter C.J. Baker. Then it was some of the phrases in the story that struck him as nearly robotic. The dead giveaway, though, that the reporter from a competing news outlet was using... The dead giveaway, though, that a reporter from a competing news outlet was using generative artificial intelligence to help write his stories came in a June 26th article about the comedian Larry the Cable Guy being chosen as the grand marshal of a local parade. It concluded with an explanation of the inverted pyramid, the basic approach to writing a breaking news story. Quote, the 2024 Cody Stampede Parade promises to be an unforgettable celebration of American independence, led by one of comedy's most beloved figures. This structure ensures that the most critical information is presented first, making it easier for readers to grasp the main points quickly, unquote. That was in the article. It's almost like Joe Biden reading the instructions on his teleprompter, like, wait for applause. And he says it out loud. Very, I suddenly forget his name. The guy from Anchorman, Ron Burgundy. After doing some digging, Baker, who has been a reporter for more than 15 years, met with Aaron Pelzar, a 40-year-old who was new to journalism and who Baker says admitted that he had used AI in his stories before he resigned from the Enterprise. Seriously, how do you use AI to generate a news story and you don't at least proofread it once? I mean, it's lazy enough, but that is the epitome of lazy. The publisher and editor at the Enterprise, which was co-founded in 1899 by Buffalo Bill Cody, have since apologized and vowed to take steps to ensure it never happens again. Where is your editorial staff on this? Is anybody proofing this guy's stuff for him before it goes to print? That's nuts. In an editorial published Monday, Enterprise editor Chris Bacon, I think your bacon is cooked, said he, quote, failed to catch, unquote, the AI copy and false quotes and apologized that, quote, AI was allowed to put words that were never spoken into stories, unquote. Well, you should lose your job. Journalists have derailed their careers by making up quotes or facts in stories long before AI came out, but this latest scandal illustrates the potential pitfalls and dangers that AI poses to many industries, including journalism, as chatbots can spit out spurious, if somewhat plausible, articles with only a few prompts. Yeah, has any of the major news outlets been guilty of this at all recently, AP? Anybody you want to bring up? Any major outlets? Anybody? AI has found a role in journalism, including in the automation of certain tasks. So now we get to make apologetics for it. It's bad if you use it over here, but it's okay over here. Some newsrooms, including the Associated Press, use AI to free up reporters for more impactful work. What does that mean, AP? But most AP staff, is that what, just 50.1%, are not allowed to use generative AI to create publishable content. Oh, what does it mean to free up reporters for more impactful work? What non-impactful work are you leaving up to AI, AP? And who is editing or reviewing this? The AP has been using technology to assist in articles about financial earnings reports since 2014. Using technology? Like spreadsheets? Like a calculator? Like an abacus? What? And more recently, for some sports stories. What do you mean by using technology? I'm using technology right now to read this article. It is also experimenting with an AI tool to translate some stories from English to Spanish. At the end of each such story is a note that explains technology's role in its production. Oh, is that supposed to give you a blanket pass on being lazy in every instance? Okay, translating language from one to the other, big deal. I mean, unless the model you're using drastically misinterprets things. But I really want to know, what is the Associated Press using AI for to free up reporters for more impactful? What does that mean? Being upfront about how the Associated Press uses AI to free up reporters for more. How? Be upfront. Tell us how. Being upfront about how and when AI is used has proven important, you don't say. Sports Illustrated was criticized last year for publishing AI-generated online product reviews that were presented as having been written by reporters who didn't actually exist. Yeah, that sounds like a problem. After the story broke, Sports Illustrated said it was firing the company that produced the articles for its website, but the incident damaged the once powerful publication's reputation. Well, I mean, if they were lied to, if they hired these guys to produce these things and they thought that humans were doing all the stuff, then sure. I wouldn't say that damages Sports Illustrated's reputation, save for the fact they didn't vet the work they were given first, I suppose. In his Powell Tribune story breaking the news about Pelzar's use of AI in articles, Baker wrote that he had an uncomfortable but cordial meeting with Pelzar and Bacon. During the meeting, Pelzar said, quote, obviously, I've never intentionally tried to misquote anybody, unquote. Well, no, you didn't intentionally misquote anybody because you let an AI do it for you. And promised to, quote, correct them and issue apologies and say they are misstatements, unquote, Baker wrote, noting that Pelzar insisted his mistakes shouldn't reflect on his Cody Enterprise editors. This mirrors a couple of scenes in Shattered Glass. It's amazing. After the meeting, the Enterprise discovered 7 stories that included AI-generated quotes from 6 people, Bacon said Tuesday. He is still reviewing other stories. If only you had, I don't know, done something like be an editor per your job title when these stories were first submitted to print. I don't know, it's just an idea. Quote, they're very believable quotes, Bacon said, noting that the people he spoke to during his interview of Pelzar's articles said the quotes sounded like something they'd say, but that they had never actually talked to Pelzar. I mean, they're very believable quotes. You know, I mean, if I take a quote from one interview and a quote from another interview that about the same topic, and I kind of mush them together and I put it out there, even though I never talked to that person, I mean, it's very believable. Well, golly, this quote looks believable. I guess I shouldn't do any follow-up. Baker reported that 7 people told him they had been quoted in Pelzar's stories but hadn't spoken to him. Pelzar did not respond to an AP phone message left at a number listed as his asking. What? AP, are you even editing your, is AI writing your articles right now? Is this an instance where, you know, reporters are doing more impactful work? You left the conclusion to this article up to AI by any chance? Pelzar did not respond to an AP phone message left at a number listed as his asking to discuss what happened. I mean, do you mean like listing a number as his? Left at a number listed as his ask. Okay. I guess it makes sense if you enunciate it in the correct way, but it just flowed completely. Blah. Okay, Bacon said Pelzar declined to discuss the matter with another Wyoming newspaper that reached out. Baker, who regularly reads the Enterprise because it's a competitor, told the AP that a combination of phrases and quotes in Pelzar's stories aroused his suspicions. I mean, aside from the one at the end that basically gives an assurance to the person generating the story that this story will now work. Pelzar's story about a shooting in Yellowstone National Park included the sentence, quote, this incident serves as a stark reminder of the unpredictable nature of human behavior, even in the most serene settings, unquote. That does sound like something of a high school book report kind of level stuff, doesn't it? Baker said the line sounded like the summaries of his stories that a certain chatbot seems to generate, in that it tacks on some kind of a life lesson at the end. Yeah, you ever looked at Google's Gemini, asked it a question or asked for a summary of information? It adds on that little thing again to assure you that what it's doing actually serves the purpose of what you asked of it. Like it's, you know, really needing to validate itself. Another story about a poaching sentencing, okay, includes quotes from a wildlife official and a prosecutor that sounded like they came from a news release, Baker said. However, there wasn't a news release and the agencies involved didn't know where the quotes had come from, he said. 2 of the questioned stories included fake quotes from Wyoming Governor Mark Gordon that his staff only learned about when Baker called them. One quote was entirely fabricated and another was practically fabricated, said Michael Perlman, a spokesperson for the governor. All right, some motorcycle guys are revving his engine outside. It's not difficult to create AI-generated stories. You ain't just whistling Dixie. Users could put a criminal affidavit through an AI program and ask it to write an article about the case, including quotes from local officials, said Alex Mahadevan, director of digital media literacy project at the Poynter Institute, the preeminent journalism think tank. Quote, these generative AI chatbots are programmed to give you an answer no matter what, whether that answer is complete garbage or not, he said. Megan Barton, the Cody Enterprises publisher, wrote an editorial calling AI, quote, the new advanced form of plagiarism And in the field of media and writing, plagiarism is something every media outlet has had to correct at some point or another, unquote. Yes, that's true. Is that making excuses for your editorial staff not following up on quotes and facts and things and claims made by their reporters? Sounds like it. Barton wrote that the newspaper now has a system in place to recognize AI-generated stories and will, quote, have longer conversations about how AI-generated stories are not acceptable, unquote. This could have all been avoided with a fact checker. Have you heard of a fact checker? Like in a news publication operation, a fact checker, someone who reads through an article, sees a quote from a person, and calls up the person to verify that you actually said this thing before you go to publication. A fact checker. It's, I don't know about the Cody Enterprise, but I have to tell you, as far as I understand it, that position has been part and parcel with most journalistic publications for a long time. So you didn't have to have some new conversation about AI to avoid this in the first place. I could see one or two stories, sort of getting under the radar, or it's all kind of hazy. Well, okay. 7 stories and you're still looking at others. Entire quotes from people and statements made that were never made or quoted. Maybe you should hire a fact checker. Just saying. In his editorial, Barton invoked the legacy of former professional baseball player Robin Ventura, who famously got the worst of a scuffle, with Hall of Fame pitcher Nolan Ryan after charging the mound during a 1993 game in a scene that is reposted on social media to this day. The editor compares his own shame to the ridicule that the then Chicago White Sox infielder, Bacon misidentified him as a member of the Chicago Cubs. Well, if only they had had a fact checker on his own edit. So wait. First off, Megan Barton, the Cody Enterprises publisher, in his editorial, Bacon, pardon me. I got Bacon and Barton mixed up. For a second there, I thought I was talking about Barton. Barton wrote and then Bacon wrote. Okay. Sorry, we're going back to Bacon. Right, Bacon. Okay, my apologies. For a second there, my brain went a little... But okay, so Bacon, the editor at the publication that was overseeing the AI-generated stories and let them go through without question, in his own editorial, he got a fact wrong and it got to publication. That's hilarious. Quote, I always suspected that the thought of being taken to the woodshed in front of millions in a fight Ventura started hurt more than his face. Now, your editor having been taken to the woodshed in the Wyoming press, I am sure of it. Yeah. And whose fault is that? You didn't even get the name of the team right in your own example, you dunce. The Enterprise didn't have an AI policy. It didn't need an AI policy. It needed a fact checker. Come on. It didn't need an AI policy. I tell you what, if an AI helps you write a story and you go through the thing as the author or co-author, I suppose, and you make sure that everything in the article is accurate, and if there are any quotes the AI injects in the thing, you remove them, and then you call up the individual to get an actual quote, and then you insert it into your AI gobbledygook, and then maybe you can get away with it. Either way, you need a fact checker. The Enterprise didn't have an AI policy, in part because it seemed obvious that journalists shouldn't use it to write stories, Bacon said. Well, the AP doesn't seem to give a rip. Pointer has a template from which news outlets can build their own AI policy. Bacon, a military veteran and former air ambulance pilot who was named editor in May after a few months working as a reporter, well, I think that might be your first problem there. Sounds like someone who is ridiculously inexperienced you're putting into an important role, and you might want to hire a fact checker. Plans to have a policy in place by the end of the week. Quote, this will be a pre-employment topic of discussion, he said. Hire a fact checker. Anyway, I could get more loud about that, I suppose, but I suppose it wouldn't help anything. That is just amazing. Alice Morgan. Hi, Alice. Hi, Scribe. Hi, Alice. Johnny Bonsacco. That's a nice way of saying got his ass kicked by an old man. Yeah. Nolan Ryan. Man of Steel. Shiro Amada. AI singularity mixed with dead internet theory. Yeah, no doubt. Bostonia. Is this art apologetic in a way... Is this article apologetic in a way that lays groundwork for softening the blow of accusations pointed towards the AP? Otherwise, who cares about Wyoming? It was interesting that they went completely aside in the middle of the article to make apologia for their own use of AI, say that they're very upfront about its use, but then the statements they make about its use are very opaque. It was interesting, wasn't it? We'll have an AI policy by the end of the week. You are bad at your job and inexperienced, and you shouldn't have gotten it. You were a reporter for a few months before becoming the editor of the publication. I understand this might be a very small town journal kind of thing, but really, anyway. Let's see. Urkelate Stefano, how crazy that people are out there listening to the AI and the AI is straight up lying. The AI isn't lying. The AI doesn't know how to lie. The AI just knows how to please. I say, AI, give me an article on this thing using this source of material. And the AI is like, right away, sir. Poof, there it is. I made you an article using the stuff that you gave me in the parameters that you provided. The end. I'll go off to my next task now. AIs are stupid. It's the people who are even stupider. But AIs are doing exactly what they're told to do. Anyway, I'm already having my voice give out. I've gone 15 minutes over time. I'm actually kind of surprised I'm within relative terms, striking distance of usual time for these shows. But boy, I had a lot to say, both about Kamala and that police officer and now about this. So I'm going to give my voice a bit of a rest now, along with the rest of you who can take the rest of Sunday to rest the rest of Sunday. Let's see, any programming notes? Well, Tuesday, granted nothing else comes up, Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, I should be on the Midnight's Edge After Dark broadcast, talking about movies and pop culture and all types of different things. That's over on the Midnight's Edge After Dark channel, so take a look out for that. Thursdays, you can find me here at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for TED Excellence. That's what I meant. TED Excellence. Yes, the show where I take a look at off-brand TED Talks for education, enlightenment, entertainment, some other words that start with the letter E that I can't think of right now. And as well, of course, you can find me here Sundays for the Sunday stream where I talk about stuff about Sundays or on Sundays. Also, did you know I have a Discord server? I have a Discord server. Would you like to join the Discord server? Link to the Discord server is in the chat right now. All you have to do is click on that link. Find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to give the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you actually watched the stream and have thus earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is Naval Observatory. Just say hello, Naval Observatory, and I'll know that you actually watched the stream and are not a bot, which is the important thing, because I don't want any AI in my Discord chat. Dang it. Beyond that, also, I just want to plug my series, Living on Borrowed Crime, interviews and discussions with true crime content creators. You can find that playlist on my channel, as well as the most recent entry into that playlist with an interview with Kamran from True Red Crime. Pretty good interview, I think, along with everything else in that playlist. I have other interviews and discussion ideas on coming as soon as schedules align, because usually I'm dealing with international personalities. I'll let you guys know. And also follow me on Twitter or X at scribe_light for all the updates and bits and pieces of things that I come up with over the course of the week. Otherwise, everyone, thank you for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated, whether it's to myself or to the fundraisers pinned to the top of the chat box, thank you guys so much for your generosity. Very much appreciated. Hope you all have a good rest of your Sunday. Hope you have a good week ahead of you. I hope you're all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon. And remember, vote Cackle. You may not regret it. Eventually. Someday. Bye, everybody.